Treatment is not designed to be the silver bullet that's going to fix anyone. And what it is designed to do is to provide, first of all, stability. And with residential treatment, with detox, those things, the wraparound services to provide safety. Because we all know by the time someone oftentimes asks for help, they're close to death. And so we've got to keep that in mind and to know step one is safety, both physical and psychological safety. And then to begin to provide the tools for repair and wherever that repair needs to happen.
Hi, this is Tim Westbrook. Welcome to I Love Being Sober. We talk about life and recovery, mental health, biohacking, alternative therapies, and everything related to living a kick-ass sober life. So let's dig in. Today's conversation is a little different than a typical podcast episode. We're sitting here live at Camelback Recovery with people who are actually doing the work of recovery right now. People who've made a courageous decision to be here, and many who didn't come into treatment for the first time. Some of you have been through treatment before. Some of you have had experiences that helped and some that didn't. And a lot of people carry questions like, why didn't it work before? What's different this time? And how do I know if this is actually going to help me? Our guest today understands those questions deeply. Jaime is the president of the Meadows Behavioral Healthcare and author of the Rehab Playbook, Demystifying Addiction Treatment. She spent her career not just treating addiction, but thinking critically about how treatment works, where it breaks down, and how we can do better for patients and for families. This is not a lecture. This is a conversation. We're going to talk honestly about treatment, what it can do, what it can't do, why it sometimes fails people, and how to approach recovery in a way that actually gives you a real shot long-term. Jaime, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sam.
I'm so grateful to have you here. We go way back.
Way back.
The very first, I guess, was it a conference or a lecture or whatever it was when you were at Northside Counseling?
Yeah.
That was the very first time we met, and that was probably 12 years ago or so?
Yeah, long time ago.
And a long time ago. So grateful to have you here.
Thank you. Well, thanks for the work you've done since then.
Yes, likewise. A lot of people here have been through treatment before. Some had good experiences and some didn't. Why do you think so many people leave treatment feeling like it didn't work for me?
Well, before we tackle the million-dollar question, I want to talk a little bit about the work that I've done and what my background is. So I am a licensed professional counselor, and I started working in treatment probably 2004. So I've seen it in all of its versions and have had, I think, every job in a residential treatment center on the therapeutic side. And so, the question that you ask, it's a great one because I have spent a lot of time in the last 10 years designing programs and looking at outcomes and working with regulators and looking at the ethics behind treatment as well. So to answer that question, why doesn't treatment work sometimes? I think we have to take a big step back and look at what's going on with someone from a whole person standpoint, mind, body, soul, relationships. And it's very difficult in an abbreviated time frame to work on every single one of those components.
Right.
I know the research tells us 90 days of treatment and the odds of long-term sobriety increase by 60%. And if we look at even 90 days addressing all of those components, it's difficult to do.
Right.
The other piece that I've come to believe over the past, I'd say probably 7-8 years, is that a lot of folks go into treatment and don't have the opportunity to really look at their trauma. A lot of people don't believe that they've got trauma. I know I didn't until I went to Survivors at the Meadows, where I learned how the messages that I carried, the shame that I carried because of things that I went through as a child. And so when we look at trauma and we look at what that means to us, what it means in our family of origin, and what it means as, we have adult trauma as well, and our ability to look at that, our ability and willingness to work on it, and the capabilities of a treatment center to really address what we call the fire in the basement, your trauma. And so those are all of the reasons why I believe people leave treatment and feel like it didn't work. The other interesting thing too is that oftentimes in addiction treatment, go through detox, we're feeling good after that. And we're like, I got this. And it's maybe not. And so that premature feeling of, okay, I'm good, I can go live my life without really going through all the steps. I've seen that really bring a lot of people down too. It's a very long-winded question too. It's a myriad of reasons why people don't have successful outcomes.
And I know I started as sober living, Camelback Recovery or sober living, and that was, I think what the statistics are, more than 90% of people relapse within the first couple of weeks or within the first year of leaving treatment. And if someone goes to sober living along with outpatient, their odds of success increase significantly. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we did at Camelback Recovery is we got people to buy into 3 months of sober living, mm-hmm. which was a good thing because, to your point, people get to a point where they think I'm good.
Yep.
And the reality is that it's not that you're not good. You're on your path, but it's more support is always better because it's just too easy once you get to, because you're going to be triggered. Mm-hmm. And it's just too easy to go back to your old ways.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that first year is so important. Mm-hmm. So I feel like clinically, if we can provide the scaffolding to get folks through that first year, mm-hmm. then the odds of increasing sobriety over 5 years increases again by 75%. So that's why, we love things like outpatient programs and sober livings. Let's work together, get that scaffolding, and get someone a year under their belt. And then a whole lot of possibilities occur.
What is it? Like 90% of people relapse within the first year. People that make it to a year, you have an 85, a 50% chance of making it to 5 years. And if you make it to 5 years, you have an 85% chance of making it for life. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I celebrated 5 years of sobriety, everybody said, congratulations, you're no longer a newcomer. I was like, what? What do you mean? That's been my experience. I mean, being in the rooms and being around recovery and people in recovery, people that make, the 1 year is the first milestone. And then after that, it's 5 years. And the people that make it to 5 years got to have a really good chance of making it.
Absolutely. And people do get better. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to write this book is for people to understand. I get texts probably 10 times a year from folks that I worked with 5 years ago, 10 years ago that say, I'm good and thank you. Not to say everything's been perfect and rosy, but they still have that sobriety. And if there has been a slip, they've got the tools and they've got the wraparound services so that a slip doesn't have to become a full-on relapse. And so staying connected to me is 95% of the battle.
So why did you write this book?
So I started to write this book during COVID, and I was working at a residential treatment center down in Tucson, and we worked against all the odds to stay open during COVID. Mm-hmm. And we kept getting new mandates. You got to close your pool. You got to close your gym. You have to do all these things. But the phone was still ringing. People still wanted to come into our care. And so we all worked together very hard as essential workers to keep the doors open. And I really, I've always been in love with the work, but I've developed a newfound respect and regard for my coworkers. And I thought, we're just one place in Tucson, Arizona. This is going on across the entire country. Mm-hmm. And because we know during COVID, people didn't get better, worse, right? They got worse and needed more help. And virtual wasn't always a fit for everyone. And so I started to interview people that were working in the field. Mm-hmm. And so my first book was called The Treatment Team, and it was written about the people that were doing the work and 50 interviews that I did. And I was going to self-publish, ended up being introduced to an agent who said, you know a lot about treatment. I think we should redo this as a playbook, because I just put my daughter in treatment and I had no idea what in the hell I was doing.
Right.
I really needed something like this to take me through the steps from someone that's actually had the jobs and knows what to do. So then I went back to the drawing board and wrote this book.
Who is this book for?
This book is for 1 in 10 people who need treatment get it. This book's for the other 9.
Okay. And how many people in the United States need treatment that don't get treatment?
I mean, it depends on what you read, but millions.
Right.
Between 20 and 40 million, depending on what you read and what you believe.
Right.
And so this book is written to talk to people that are struggling themselves and also loved ones. And so in each chapter, I've got a for fans and family section to take the information that was shared and talk to the family members and loved ones about it. Because we know oftentimes it's the people that care about us that are really looking for the help.
Right. When someone says, I've already tried rehab, what do you think they usually mean underneath that statement?
That there's shame. And that the fact that I've tried rehab and it didn't work, or I failed, or the treatment center was crappy, or, whatever we tell ourselves. And, sometimes that's true. Not all treatment centers are wonderful. But I believe that there's learning in every treatment experience.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And I don't believe in failed treatment. I believe that when we look hard enough and close enough, there was something that was learned.
Yeah.
And so when we build those upon one another, then we will have our breakthrough.
Right. Yeah. And I've seen people and I've heard people say, well, I just sent my loved one to treatment and cost me $50,000 and they relapsed. So it was a complete waste. It's not a complete waste.
Absolutely not. We don't know when someone's going to get their miracle. And there used to be a thing maybe 10 years ago in treatment, you'll remember this, where if someone AMA'd, leave against medical advice, a lot of treatment centers wouldn't admit them back in. And that never sat right with me. And I was always think, wait a second, if someone had a recurrence of their cancer or their heart disease or any other chronic illness, would you actually say, no, you can't come back? Of course we wouldn't. I believe if someone AMAs and then they want to come back to the same treatment center, that's beautiful.
Right.
That tells me they felt safe here.
Right.
And you're doing something right, because this has the potential to be a sacred place of healing. And so, yeah, come on back. Welcome home.
How do you separate people from treatment didn't work? Separate the two different groups of people. Treatment didn't work, or I didn't actually get what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between those two statements?
Nothing.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like when someone says treatment didn't work, we get to flip that, reframe it, and look at what did work. Mm-hmm. And like we were just talking about, in every treatment episode, there is goodness. First of all, you walked in the door, right? That's something to be celebrated. But to really dig in and look at the positive aspects of the work that was done and the work that was undone. Because oftentimes, and you've seen this countless times, someone will leave treatment and go into a really, really unhealthy family situation. So it's a setup for failure.
Right.
And so there are a myriad of things that we can look at and say, okay, how would we have done it differently? And then let's do it differently.
And that speaks to progress.
For sure.
It's progress, not perfection.
Right.
It's like a relapse doesn't mean that you failed. It's just, you could say it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Mm-hmm. And I like Brandon Lee. I remember when I had him on the podcast, he talks about, he says, I've been in recovery for 11 years. He stumbled a couple of times. He relapsed a couple of times. But just because someone relapses doesn't mean that all of the work they've done didn't do anything.
Absolutely not. And that can be a tough sell to family members. Mm-hmm. But to realize that, to me, if someone relapses, if they pick something up again and then they seek help, then that to me shows that things did really work. Right. And, I do look at that as a slip rather than a full-on relapse.
Right. They're on the path.
On the path, and there's work yet to be done.
Right. And what do you think treatment is realistically designed to do, and what do you think it's not designed to do?
Treatment is not designed to be the silver bullet that's going to fix anyone. And what it is designed to do is to provide, first of all, stability. And with residential treatment, with detox, those things, the wraparound services to provide safety. Because we all know by the time someone oftentimes asks for help, they're close to death. And so we've got to keep that in mind and to know step one is safety, both physical and psychological safety. And then to begin to provide the tools for repair and wherever that repair needs to happen, like we talked about, mind, body, spirit.
There's a lot more to it than just stopping the drinking and stopping.
Oh gosh, yes. And that's why it's so important, the point I made a bit ago about people who will go through detox and say, I'm good.
Right.
No, you're not.
No, there's a lot more work that needs to be done. Why is it dangerous for people to come into treatment believing this is supposed to fix them or change everything overnight?
Because unrealistic expectations. I mean, expectations aren't good. I mean, what does the big book tell us? That's future resentments. And I've seen so many people walk through the doors of treatment and believe that in 30 days, they are going to have this wonderful, beautiful life. Yes, certain components will be wonderful and beautiful, but, to say we're fixed implies we're broken. And we're not broken. We have a chronic disease that has impacted our brains, but we're not broken. And so we don't need fixing.
Right.
We need healing.
We need healing.
And tools.
Right. And it's a journey. And you mentioned earlier trauma. Do you believe that trauma is at the root of all addiction?
Yes. Don't even need to think about that one.
100%. Even if you think it's not there.
And it's so interesting. I tell this story, and it is in the book that I wrote, and I used to tell it in groups. That when I was in graduate school, I went through a trauma certification, and we all had to do our trauma timelines. I don't know if you do something similar here, but where we talk about all of the trauma in our lives. And some of the stories were heart-wrenching, of course. People just had been through hell on earth. And then another one of our students said, as she did her trauma timeline, when she was a senior in high school, she ran for president and she lost. And that was just heartbreaking to her, and she considered that her trauma. And one of the other graduate students said, now you're really pissing me off. I went through all of these deaths and sexual abuse and this and that, and you went through that? Like, how dare you? And I'll never forget it. Our professor said, no, you stop, because everyone's pain is maximum to them. And if you're going to be any good at this work, you need to come in with an open heart and an empathetic spirit to say, yes, that had an impact on your nervous system. And it created shame, and it impacted the way that you show up in the world. So let's get to healing. But I never forgot that.
How important is it for someone to acknowledge that they do have trauma in their past?
I think it's 100% critical, because what is trauma? It's something that impacts our nervous system. And we all carry our trauma every place we go. And so if our body, when we have trauma that has impacted our nervous system, and again, everyone has a different type of trauma, but it's there, it's in our body, we carry it. And then our body also doesn't know that we're safe. When something triggers us, we don't know what's going to trigger us either. And so to be able to recognize that and to say, okay, that's an old wound. That's something else that's going on in my body. And to be able to have tools to calm yourself and to just say, this isn't that. This isn't that. I use that all the time so that I can remind myself that whatever I'm feeling, we understand how our trauma shows up in our body. And we can say, no, you're safe. This isn't that, all's well.
Right. And they say awareness is 90% of transformation. Mm-hmm. So being aware that you're being triggered, it's like, let me sit with that. What's going on?
And it manifests in different ways. Some people get angry. Some people shut down, fight, flight, freeze, right? Mm-hmm. And there's one that they use now is fawn. Like when we're triggered, we either fight, we flight, we freeze, or we fawn. And I've really thought a lot about that, where you see people who are like overly nice and overly complimentary and overly approval seeking. Mm-hmm. That can be a manifestation of trauma too, a way to create safety. Right. And so understanding where trauma shows up in your body is so important, and it helps us be in relation to others.
How important, or do you think it's important at all, for families of the loved one to acknowledge that they have experienced trauma?
I think it's critical. I think that anything that we can do as a family system to move the focus off of the identified patient, mm-hmm. that you're the problem, and to look at it as we know the system that a family is.
Moving on, trauma, pain, and why substances made sense. Many people here use substances to cope long before they ever thought of it as an addiction. How do you explain that without excusing the behavior?
We've all got something. We've all got a coping strategy. Mm-hmm. And every person, as it helps us get through the day. And they're all good until they're not. And to be able to look at substance use or porn or gambling or shopping or anything that we do and to help us cope, and to be able to understand when did it become unhealthy and why. And then to be able to replace those unhealthy coping skills with healthy ones.
What's your definition of addiction? Do you have a definition?
I have an understanding of it and so I would say that it is utilizing unhealthy coping strategies in spite of negative consequences.
Right. Yep.
I guess I would even say coping strategies.
Okay. Yeah. The one of the definitions I've heard is a behavior or substance that you continue despite negative consequences.
Yeah.
It's a pretty basic.
I think that says it all. And I think it applies to everything, whether, again, it's gambling or shopping or sex or relationships or all of the above, right? Because we know and this to me is such an interesting phenomenon, when we treat one, when we get sobriety in one, then something else will rear its head.
Right. Right. Yeah, I remember. I mean, it's anything, any behavior. And I remember it was many years ago when TikTok came out. I was looking at TikTok, and I remember looking at TikTok to help me go to sleep. And I remember looking at TikTok, and next thing you know, it's like 3 hours later, and I lose sleep and I feel terrible the next day. It's like, that could be considered a negative coping strategy. Mm-hmm.
Well, the whole digital addiction, and that's not politically correct. Not politically, but it's not correct to say digital addiction anymore. So misuse, overuse. Mm-hmm. And so, it's a whole interesting point of view when you look at, TikTok, Tourette's, and all these different syndromes that have been created, and Instagram. And then we go into, because at Meadows, we have a sex addiction program. And so we go into, OnlyFans and all of those things, and the impact that has on folks, and the addictive nature to it.
Right. For people who don't identify as traumatized, how do you help them understand why their nervous system still matters in recovery?
Mm-hmm. And so I think to really talk through just the definition of trauma, and to really break it down into any time that we have felt threatened, that we believe our physical safety and psychological safety are threatened. That can be trauma.
Right. What happens when someone tries to stay sober they get sober, they go to treatment, they try to stay sober without addressing the trauma?
Mm-hmm. What I've always thought is that, I'm a big 12-step advocate. And, the research shows us that 12-step and cognitive behavioral therapy, that's the secret sauce. That's what we need to do. We've got the community. We have the cognitive work. What we don't have with that is that body work. That's top down, not bottom up. And when we work bottom up, that's where we can really deal with the sensations and the things that we may not understand unless we do that work.
Right. A lot of people hear the word accountability and they think punishment or shame. How do you define accountability in recovery?
To me, accountability as a human is, do what you say and say what you do, and to be in truth. Because oftentimes, and this is true in recovery, but it's also true as humans, the most dangerous things we can do is lie to ourselves. And to be that rigorously honest human, that to me is the essence of accountability.
Doing the next right thing, doing what you say you're going to.
Yeah.
And I believe, and we see people that, if someone breaks the rules at our treatment center and then they break the rules again, letting them continue to break the rules is probably not going to be helpful, not only for the rest of the patients at the center, it's not going to be helpful for them either. Can you speak to that? Why is that not helpful to hold someone accountable?
Because, it's not helpful to them because it basically rubber stamps poor behavior. And the only way that we can really embrace change is to have our positive actions reinforced. And so we're told if we reinforce negative behavior and there's no consequences, then we're told this is okay. And that, again, will not be something that will move them toward healing. And it does set a horrible example to the other folks.
Right.
But I would say when someone repeatedly breaks rules, I want to know why. That to me, that's not a disciplinary matter. That's a clinical matter.
Right.
That would be a very long talk between my client and me. Why don't you deserve to live? Let's go right to it. What are you doing? Why don't you deserve to live? Help me understand that.
Why are you sabotaging yourself?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, and I tended as a therapist to be very dramatic, where we just state the worst consequences, that when we do self-sabotage repeatedly, we are jeopardizing our lives. So what about you? What about this experience do you think you don't deserve?
Right. How can treatment help someone take responsibility without reinforcing the belief that they're broken or defective?
By believing they deserve it and that they're walking in the door because they deserve repair, they deserve healing. And I think that's the basic work. Why are people not ready for treatment? First of all, because, if you look at the whole stages of change, they haven't gone through what they needed to go through in order to believe that they need to change their life.
Right.
And so that, to me, embracing that, yes, maybe I'm going to look at life in a different way is very different than saying I'm broken.
And it's the belief, in my opinion, it's the belief that I'm worthy.
100%, that all humans have inherent value, including myself.
Right. And the limiting beliefs are just, if someone has their limiting beliefs, I'm not worthy. It took me a long time. There were areas, I've been sober, I'm coming up on 15 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And March 8th is my sobriety birthday. And I'd say it's been a journey. I wasn't worthy of everything right away. I can say that I've become more worthy, and it's the belief in myself that I am worthy. And how does that, how important is it for someone to believe that they're worthy, and how do they get there?
I think it's one of the most important things. And, we get there by doing work on our shame. There's so much shame that goes along with addiction, depression, anxiety, trauma, all of it. We have a shame core. And as we fill in that shame core and we don't have the opportunity to empty it, that's where that lack of inherent value and worthiness comes in.
I would also say that if my behavior is aligned with my values, then I'm gonna feel good about myself, and I'm more likely to feel that I'm worthy. Mm-hmm. Whereas if my behavior is not aligned with my values, that's the lying, cheating, and stealing, then that's the stuff that just eats away at my core.
It does. It really does. And there's a lot of it in the repair. A lot of it is relational, because when we're in our disease, we do things that impact others. And as part of the 12-step and as part of family healing, to be able to make amends, mm-hmm. and for both parties to do here's what I regret, here's what I resent, here's what I appreciate, and here's how we move forward. That is such an essential part of worthiness. And so often to know that you are loved.
Right. When is it time for someone to go out and start making amends to their family members?
We do it in residential treatment. We begin that process, but you can't you can't begin that work without psychoeducation for the family members, mm-hmm. so that they understand, oh my gosh, this is, my loved one can't just say no, this isn't a choice. Mm-hmm. That there's a lot of education from a neuroscience and addiction standpoint that I believe needs to happen with loved ones before we can sit in chairs like this and talk about what we regret and what we resent. And again, we're not letting anyone off the hook.
Right.
It's educational and it's so important.
Right. And it's a process. And what about the family member that says, when is my loved one going to make amends to me? I'm ready. They've been through treatment and I'm ready for them to apologize. I'm ready for them to take responsibility. Mm-hmm. What do you say to that family? Because I've seen that too.
Oh,
I've seen that. And it's like, it's a process. Mm-hmm. What do you say to that family member?
What are you doing? What's your work? Tell me about the work you're doing.
Right.
And then let's dig in and figure out, why is that a priority in this moment? Because I'm going to let you know when your loved one is ready to do that.
Right.
But right now, let's talk about what you're doing.
Yeah, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
How often does the family play a part in the addicted person's like where they're at?
Addiction and all mental illness, they're family diseases. They impact the entire family. Mm-hmm. And so, without any blame or shame or, finger pointing, it's all part of this whole ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And so understanding the role everyone plays, I think, is essential in all family systems. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The other point I wanted to add about what you just mentioned, and again, I talk about this in the book, is the stages of change for family members. Mm-hmm. We all work with a stage of change model. I don't know if you've got it on the wall here. Most treatment centers do, but where you say, there's pre-contemplative, contemplative, and action stage, and then maintenance. And, we go through anytime we want to make a change, there's various stages of readiness, preparedness. Mm-hmm. And that's true for families too. And in our perfect world, our loved one and our family member are in lockstep in a stage of change. That's pretty rare.
Right.
And so for a family member to look at their stage of change and how ready they are, not only to change the identified patient, but to change themselves, I believe is an essential part of the work.
Right, right. When someone slips or relapses, what's the most unhelpful way to interpret that? And what's a more useful way?
The most unhelpful way is this for a family member or for the person who slipped?
Both.
Both. For the family member, it is the worst thing we can do is finger pointing, mm-hmm. and to make it about ourselves and to say, do you know how much this hurts me? Do you know how much money I spent on you? And if you really loved me, you wouldn't have done that. So take yourself out of the equation. That's the first thing. And for someone who has been through treatment and may have relapsed, not to completely let themselves off the hook, because we don't want that. That can get dangerous. But to say, this can happen, get back on your horse. Reach out to someone. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean it's over. It means that we need to look at things a little bit differently. Seek help. You've got people that care.
What do you say to the patient that relapses and they don't take any responsibility for the relapse? Meaning, they're the victim essentially. Like, well, this happened. The treatment center did this. The house manager did this. The BHT did that. My dad did this. My mom did this. So it's all external. Yes. It's not my fault. You would relapse too if you had to experience what I've experienced.
That to me, that's someone's disease talking loud and clear. And, that's a relapse trigger. Something that we really look for is treatment trashing. When someone says, oh my gosh, my counselor I didn't like her, and the food sucked and the beds were awful. When we start looking at the negative of the treatment experience and then we go to other relationships, that's the disease talking. And so to call someone out on, okay, we've heard plenty from your disease. Let's talk to you. What's really going on here? What are you afraid of?
Right. It's the responsibility. Because if I'm a victim, and I played the victim before, I got no chance.
That's right.
I got no chance if I'm the victim. I got to look in the mirror. Where was I wrong? What was my part? What am I going to do differently next time?
And what's the payoff? Like, I believe that none of us do anything without getting paid in one way or another.
Right.
But for victims, to call them on their secondary gain, like, what are you getting out of being firmly planted in your victim seat? And, the Cartman drama triangle, and I have that in the book too. When someone digs in on being a victim, they've got someone else that they're appointing as a rescuer and someone else that they're appointing as a persecutor or a perpetrator even. So, what's your payoff here? What's your primary and secondary gain from being so stuck?
Right. So let's talk about aftercare and daily life after, why aftercare and daily life matter more than motivation. Why do you think people feel strong in treatment but struggle when real life happens?
Outside the bubble. And that's where, a lot of treatment centers, we don't even allow electronics access. And so, that's great. And that's that psychological and physical wraparound we talked about to create safety, which has to happen. But as we dip our toe in the real world, and we have to deal with things like the voicemails from our dealer and all these other things that we have been able to externalize for the time being. And then one by one, and that's why I love programs, outpatient programs where we can dip our toe in the real world and then still work with clinical support to look at all these things. And so we've got to titrate, I believe, our involvement in the outside world.
So what does recovery actually look like outside of treatment to stay alive, especially early on?
So can I shoot for the stars? In a perfect world, I would like to see people go to PHP. If they don't have a lot of recovery capital in their home, if they're not safe in their home, if they don't have a supportive family, then go to a transitional living and then work a 12-step program. If you want to residential, stay connected through the alumni services. Alumni services are just beautiful. Usually there's no cost. There's an app to provide support. There's a lot of goodness in alumni. So staying connected to your place of healing, your sacred space, and then continuing the work for yourself and your loved ones in a continued care program for a year, if possible. That to me is what it looks like.
When is it helpful for someone to, stay away from let's say, for example, someone is from another state, maybe they're from California, they come out to Arizona. When is it appropriate for them to stay in Arizona? And when is it appropriate for them to go back home to California?
And so I believe if they're triggered in their home environment, the people, places, and things, then keep a distance, emotional distance and physical distance. Some people need to go home, for a variety of reasons. And our job is to help them build the recovery capital to succeed at home.
Right. Yeah, in my opinion, stay away from your environment as long as you possibly can, because the path of least resistance is to go back to doing what you were doing. Mm-hmm. It's like new hobbies, new interests, new playground, new playmates, like everything. Mm-hmm. New eating habits, new sleeping habits, everything's got to change. And when you go back to your old environment, it's just too easy, especially if you become triggered, which you will become triggered at some point. It's too easy to go back to your old behaviors.
Absolutely. And so that's, if possible, that's the desired impact. We work with a lot of professionals, but that's just not possible. Mm-hmm. I've always done a lot of work with flight attendants. I know you met Heather, who was here. Yep. And they've got to be back on an airplane.
Right.
Serving alcohol. And so that continued care plan looks completely different than someone who's able to stay the other side of the country from their old life.
Okay. What role do routine, relationships, and environment play compared to motivation or willpower?
Well, willpower is, I don't even care for that. It's the sort of thing, willpower is good, if we're talking about having an extra cookie or something. But when it comes to actually wrestling with a chronic disease, willpower is not going to cut it. Motivation, yes. But to me, motivation is hope. Mm-hmm. And it's hope that, yes, I can have a different way of doing things. I can have a different life. And so, but what were the three things that you...
routine, relationships, and environment.
Those are all, top of the list, because those will help us address the people, places, and things that are triggers.
Yeah, Dr. Ben Hardy wrote a book called Willpower Doesn't Work.
No.
And if you're in the environment, always wins. Mm-hmm. Always wins.
Mm-hmm. And again, this isn't a matter of willpower. Mm-hmm. It really isn't.
Right. It's taking action, doing the next right thing, putting yourself in a good environment, in positive relationships with people that you want to be like, people that support your recovery, mm-hmm. people that don't suppress, promote the old behaviors.
That's right. And, allowing your nervous system and your brain sufficient time to heal. Because our brains will heal. Our bodies will heal. There is reason to hope, but it takes time.
It takes time. There is hope. We've seen lots of people recover. Mm-hmm. Recovery is possible for everybody.
Absolutely. 100%.
Many people here feel pressure to get it right this time for their families. How can that pressure actually interfere with recovery?
Well, you said it, because it's for their families rather than for them. And we cannot do this for someone else. We've got to do it for ourselves. And that goes back to the worthiness, the inherent value that you deserve to live a different way. And then your families will benefit, but they can't be the main reason you're doing this.
I remember when I first got sober, my now ex-wife, she said, "I'm leaving you, and the only way I'll consider taking you back is if you never drink again and you go to rehab. And so that's what I did. I got sober, and 6 months into my recovery, she said, "You're not even doing this for me. You're doing this for yourself." Mm-hmm. And which is the only way it's going to work.
Yes.
And we ended up going in separate ways, which I believe was the right thing to do. But regardless, it just speaks to the fact that that's why it worked. Mm-hmm. Is because I did it for me. Mm-hmm. And I'm one of I've never relapsed, which is rare, but I believe it's because I took all the suggestions. I did everything that they told me to do. I did the work, and I did it for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. This is an important time not to be selfish, self-centered, but self-focused. Mm-hmm.
Self-focused, love yourself.
Mm-hmm. Love yourself enough to live a different way and connect to a higher power. I don't care who or what it is, but to believe that something is greater than you is bigger than you, I think that's an important piece of it too.
What do families often misunderstand about what someone in early recovery truly needs?
That's such an interesting question. I believe that, I've seen so many folks with the best intentions believe that they can do it for their loved one and that they can basically manage their, so many family members, they're hanging on for dear life because they don't want their loved one to die. Of course they don't. So they think they can hang on and control someone into sobriety. It doesn't work that way. And so that to me is one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen is that control.
So if families are watching this later, what's one thing you'd want them to stop doing and one thing you'd want them to start doing?
I would like them to stop making it about themselves and stop thinking about how this impacts their lives. And I would love for them to start by thinking, okay, from a negotiable and non-negotiable standpoint, here are things that are non-negotiable with me. Behaviors that I'm going to say is that, in a very not confrontational, but carefrontational, if you do 1, 2, and 3, then I will take care of myself and ask you to leave or I will leave this relationship. I think I've seen that be very, very effective so that everyone understands right away.
These are the boundaries.
These are the boundaries. And again, yes, and I realize I had said things that could be interpreted as contradictory to know that, this is what your loved one needs to heal. And yes, these are boundaries that you can have. And that's a loving thing to do, is to set boundaries with someone rather than to try to control the hell out of them. I've worked with families that, I'm going to take your keys and I'm going to measure the gas in your car and I'm going to read your phone and I'm going to do all those things. They're done out of love, but they're done to make you feel better. Those aren't the things that are going to help your loved one grow.
So I have a few more questions, but I also want to open it up to questions to the group. So floor's open. Anybody have what questions do you guys have?
You mentioned that the recovery statistics and how they progress over the years. How does that differ between someone who's seeking treatment for like mental health only reasons versus someone who also has a substance abuse problem?
The numbers are very different, and I haven't seen any recent numbers on mental health only, and I'll tell you why. Just because the range in people seeking mental health treatment are so broad and wide that I think it's difficult to capture those statistics. I think it would depend on, we would need to narrow it down a little bit more to see like what the diagnosis would be, what the treatment plan was, those kinds of things.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I went to the restroom. Is there any information statistic-wise on holistic treatment combined with clinical treatment?
Yes, definitely.
I definitely feel like maybe that's a missing component that I haven't really seen with recovery.
So that's really becoming more accepted, to be honest with you. There was a time that, people would have looked at any things like acupuncture and even neurofeedback, massage, anything that is more holistic in nature that helps us with our bodies and as woo-woo shit, People just didn't have much respect for it. And we've always known that, we heal mind, body, spirit. And so that the integrated piece, the integrative piece is really just getting more attention and more research is coming out on it. And so, yes, we're in our infancy in measuring that.
And is there any because I know that this could probably cross a boundary with clinical treatment, but like identifying the need to be accepted and have like an approach where you can actually say to a patient, you are loved and integrate that and ingrain that in the patient's mindset, I think would be really impactful. And when you feel accepted and not judged and loved, I know it's kind of crossing some type of clinical boundary by telling a patient you are loved, or, in that regard, that I think that they would probably have a better success rate. Wouldn't you agree?
100%. And so I've got two different answers to that one. The first one is, I work at the Meadows. We are rooted in the work of Pia Melody. And part of her, she was the one that really began the, developmental childhood trauma plays a part in all of our lives. But so much of that is to believe in our inherent value, that every child comes onto the planet with inherent value. And where the problems occur is with developmental childhood trauma. And there's a variety of symptoms and things we come to believe in ourselves, shame we carry. And so I couldn't agree more that the fact that we all have inherent value and worth and deserve to be loved, that is 100% the essence of, I believe, any good clinical care. And I have no problem telling a patient that I work with that they are worthy of love, and that, I feel love for them as a human. So that's the first part. The second part where you're really spot on is if we look at suicide research, and we know that the number of people who die by suicide in early recovery is extremely alarming. Our suicide statistics are going up in the country, and one of the protective factors is that feeling of belonging. And a risk factor is when we don't belong. And so when we can create an environment where someone belongs, feeling part of, then sometimes that's just enough.
I have one more just because you brought up something that's close to home. Is there something that could be like a communal like offset to recovery, where there's a community program where people can kind of converge, where they see their fellow peers that are in recovery and make that transition into, without having to do sober living perhaps, and they have like a mentorship program that's not necessarily AA for people that don't really find that particular path aligned with their personal belief system?
There's a number of different options out there, and I'm happy to send Tim additional resources. And, there's different alumni associations and all sorts of different things. So yes, because, there are folks that 12 steps don't resonate, and we've got to find a different approach. But, again, to create that feeling of community and belonging is so important.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Thank you for those questions.
That's a quick question. What would you, I know you said about people relapsing and stuff like that. What would you say to a person that has been in a lot of treatment centers, like 10, 20, 30 times, like those type, is there much of a, I don't know where, someone who's continually failed or screwed up, relapsed a lot of times. And I was just wondering if you thought there's any difference.
Don't give up, first of all, because you know what? I've seen plenty of people get it on their 31st time. And I think to really look at each episode individually and collectively, and to see where could there be a different choice that was made.
Okay.
But I think the main message is don't give up.
Okay. Yeah, it's just, like me, I'll share, I've been in a lot of treatment centers.
Okay.
And, it gets harder.
Of course.
Because, you hear a lot of the same things, and you're like, what am I keep running into a wall, it feels like. Mm-hmm. But, I hear that a lot. Don't give up. I feel good this time around.
Yeah.
Wrong, but, it's definitely just in the back of your head. I feel like it's just when you've been in treatment a lot of different times, it's just like, when's the other shoe going to drop?
Yeah.
Type thinking. But I don't know. Just was curious on your thinking on it.
I think that to really look at, again, every episode and really what your continued care looked like, and to really look at where you could have turned left instead of right, and to also look at what you learned each time. Because I think that's so important. And Tim touched on this too. You know, there's no such thing as wasted treatment. And so if you allow yourself to use those as a scaffold to look back on what you learned and how you grew from it, I think that's important as well.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay, let's talk about hope.
Okay.
For someone here who's thinking, I hope this works, but I'm scared to believe it will, what would you say to them?
I would say I've seen it work, and to keep doing the right thing, and to also understand. I think there's such a personal dimension to hope, to know what works for you, because we all have a different path, and to be able to keep your own path and to know, okay, I will do these things that I know, that are the treatment recommendations. I've got to do that. But to also understand what will give you hope and what are things that you want to get out of this, and to keep relentlessly working your plan for hope.
I'm thinking of the statement, your best thinking got you where you are today. Mm-hmm. Your best thinking is not going to get you out of here. Mm-hmm. So it's probably a good idea to take suggestions.
Yeah. And, I'm a big fan. Obviously, I'm a therapist, but in the Therapeutic Alliance, and to have a therapist that you really trust, that'll call you on your bullshit, but believes in you. And, when you can't have hope, let your therapist give you some hope. When you don't feel loved, let them love you. If you don't believe in God, let them pray for you to their God, whoever that may be. But that therapist and that Therapeutic Alliance is everything. And if you don't have it, keep looking for it.
What does real progress in recovery look like for someone, especially for someone new in their first 90 days?
I think to me, real progress looks like peace and acceptance, and where that fear dissipates, and the confidence, one day at a time. But to me, that's what it looks like. I see real peace in people. And, not that halo effect that we get around day 12 and 15, right, but true peace, where we're like, okay, I can feel all this shit and it's not going to kill me. That to me is what I think is beautiful.
What gives you genuine hope, knowing, especially after seeing so many people recover, people that have gone to treatment 10, 20, 30 times?
Yep.
What gives you hope after all these years working in this field?
I get a text, 12. I've got a client that was literally dead from an overdose, and his mother was with him and begged the paramedics to just give him one more shot with Narcan and to keep doing CPR. And he came back. And 12 is his sobriety date, and he never misses one to text me. And I worked with him, I worked with his mother, then his wife. So, I know these things can work. So that's what gives me hope. And, we're coming out with really new technology and medications, and, the adverse childhood experience study. That to me was extremely liberating, because we know that the research shows us that adverse childhood experiences really impact our trauma and our bodies and our way that we're living our lives. And so when we stay alive one more day, the hope is that there will also be new things that will help us heal. There's TMS here. A lot of really good research around TMS. Mm-hmm. 10, 15 years ago, there wasn't the acceptance of medication assisted treatment therapies. Every day we learn something new.
Right. And how connected the mind, body, and spirit are.
Oh, huge. Huge.
I have a guy that I see, his name's Wes Kress, and I go there for a workout, but he's really more kind of like a therapist, and he does acupuncture as well. And when I tell people I go and see him, they're like, well, what does he do? It's like, well, it's kind of a workout, but then also it's like talk therapy. And so it's physical, emotional, spiritual, mental. It's all of the things. In my experience in recovery is that the physical taps into the emotional, mental, and spiritual, all of the things. And there's more evidence that supports it today.
Absolutely. And to be able to just do something to move, that's so important to healing our bodies and our brains.
Doing a cold plunge.
Anything.
Okay, I think that we're coming to the end. And by the way, Jaime brought books, so there are books in the back here for everybody. A copy of her rehab playbook. Thank you so much for that. And is there anything I missed? Anything that I should have asked you, or anything else you want to mention?
I don't think so. I think we covered all of it, and I really appreciate all of you being here.
Okay. How can people learn more about you, get connected to you, and so forth?
So my information is in the book. I believe they have my email in here. So feel free to reach out. And I can give you my contact details as well.
Awesome.
Well, you got them, but yeah, to share.
Okay. Jaime, thank you for meeting people where they actually are, not where they wish they were. Mm-hmm. And for everyone here, I want to say this: being in treatment doesn't mean you failed before. It means you're still willing to try again. Yeah. And that really matters. Recovery isn't about getting fixed. It's about getting honest, getting support, and learning how to live differently one day at a time.
Amen.
Jaime, thank you.
Thank you.
Give it up for Jaime. Jaime.
Thanks, you.
Thanks so much for listening to I Love Being Sober. I hope you got something valuable from today's episode. And if you're looking for more resources on recovery, mental health, or any of the therapies we talk about, head over to camelbackrecovery.com. You can find more episodes, blog posts, and ways to connect. Until next time, take care of yourself, keep growing, and keep living a kick-ass sober life.